What's going on, kids? It is time for us to have some science. I know things are a little bit different with me being across the hall, but we're still kind of be together for science today, which is fine. We're going to start our unit on body systems. And you can see here, I'll have to write this at the top of our anchor charts that you can identify each body system. And you do know what each body system does, so its function. And the reason why you have to do that is so that you can see how it compares to other body systems and how those body systems interact in order to keep us alive. But before we start doing any of that, we're going to do a very quick unit, I guess is what you would call it. It's still related to body systems in a lot of ways, but it is unicellular versus multicellular organisms. And I know we have seen some of these words on our morning work, and we've talked about unicellular and multicellular, but we're going to go over it now so that it's official. I'm hoping that that's going to be on our vocabulary sheets this week. If it is not, we are going to add them because they are very important terms, and we will see some of those questions on the test that we have, and for certain at the end of the quarter on the benchmark, I know they'll talk about unicellular versus multicellular organisms as well. Now, unicellular versus multicellular organisms. And so we have to kind of pay attention to some things here. We notice that it says unicellular. And the way that we have to approach unicellular is we look at that prefix. And we know that if we had a unicorn or anything of that nature, that we would have a creature with one horn. If we were riding a unicycle, that would be not a bicycle, it would be one-wheeled. And so when we look at that, we talk about one. So that is a one-celled organism. If you take a look over here, you might notice that this one says multicellular. And obviously when we look at multicellular, if you look at somebody that's a multimillionaire, they have made millions more than once. And so we know that a multicellular organism is going to be made up of more than one cell. Now, I know that that on the surface seems very simple. That is almost like salt water and fresh water simple, but it does get a little bit more complicated than that as we move along. Again, multi-celled organisms have a large number of specialized cells. Now, if you are currently taking notes, which I kind of hope that you are writing this word down, specialized cells. Now, we are getting ready to study the body systems. When we talk about bone cells, when we talk about digestive cells, when we talk about skin cells, when we talk about brain cells and nerves, all of those are very special cells that have a very unique purpose. They do not all serve the same purpose, and all of those specialized cells get together to form different organs that in turn make up the human body, and they all keep us alive. We could not function without respiratory cells. We would not be alive if we did not have digestive cells. They are very important. So when you see the word specialized cells, if it's saying to you that something has specialized cells, more than likely they are talking about a multi-celled organism because we have to have those very special cells. Single-celled, unicellular organisms are very different. They only have one cell. They do not have other cells to help them function at all. They have to do everything inside of that one cell. They have to move, they have to reproduce, they have to eat, they have to get rid of waste, all inside of one cell. So multi-celled organisms and unicellular organisms are different. There are some things that they have in common, but on the surface of this, again, when you have a multi-celled organism, more than likely you're going to have specialized cells. They all work together to keep the organism alive. Unicellular or single-celled organisms do not have more than one cell. They have one cell, and they have to do everything inside of that cell in order to keep that organism alive. So unicellular, feel free to pause this video whenever you need to, because I know that that's important to you. But when we're talking about a unicellular organism, I would most definitely be writing down the fact that it is a single-celled organism. One other thing about most, not all, you'll see in a video later on that not all of them, but most unicellular organisms are microscopic. Microscopic. And I know we've talked about that word in class before, but microscopic means that you have to have a microscope in order to see it. Now, that should not be shocking. unicellular organisms have one cell. Of course, they would be extremely tiny for the most part. There's always some one or two things that kind of seems to break the rules, but that's okay. Most unicellular organisms are going to be microscopic. So when you're looking at bacteria, when you're looking at amoebas and parameciums and these euglenas, these different types of organisms that are made of one cell, they are going to be microscopic. Now, how do I know if an organism is unicellular? What are the things that I'm going to look at? Well, first and foremost is how many cells does it have? If it has more than one, it's not unicellular. If it's made up of just one cell, it is one-celled, and that's very important. What makes unicellular organisms so unique when compared to multicellular organisms? Well, this is something you should most definitely write in your notes. Unicellular organisms carry out all of life's processes in one cell. They carry out all of life's processes in one cell. It is kind of odd to think of this teeny tiny microscopic organism as something that is complete, because you would think that there would need to be more, but it is actually a complete organism. This amoeba is an organism. It is living on its own. It is able to, again, carry out all of life's processes inside of this one cell in order to keep this unicellular organism alive, and that is extremely important. They have to obtain nutrients. They have to eat. Now, again, depending on what type of organism we're looking at here, if we're looking at something that is going to be a producer, they're going to go through photosynthesis. If it is not a producer, they are going to have to somehow consume food in order to survive. And we'll get into some of that as the week moves on. But again, unicellular, microscopic organisms that are able to carry out all of life's processes inside of one cell. You know how this works. We will watch this video when I get back into class. Can't watch that on YouTube. That would be copyright laws. Now, we have something else to talk about here, and that is multicellular organisms. This is organisms that are made up of more than one cell. They are made up of more than one cell. And as I've said before, if you don't have this in your notes, you probably should get this in your notes. Specialized cells. Multicellular organisms must have specialized cells in order to carry out all of life's functions. Whether we are this teeny tiny little bee or this giant bear, they are both multicellular organisms. They are not microscopic, and they have more than one cell. And each cell inside of their body has a very specific purpose. For example, this bear is going to have digestive cells. Those cells are there to break down the food that the bear ingests. It has respiratory cells. Those cells are used to take in oxygen and get rid of carbon dioxide. They're going to have muscle cells that are there to keep them warm and help them move. Bone cells to give them their shape and to protect their organs. Again, multicellular organisms need many different cells, many specialized cells in order to live. Otherwise, they are not going to be able to make it. Again, how do I know it's a multicellular organism? Because it's made up of more than one cell. And they need specialized cells in order to survive. We'll watch this video when I get back into the classroom together. Now, we've talked about some of the differences: unicellular, one cell, multicellular, many cells, specialized cells. Do they have anything in common? And they absolutely do have things in common. I've seen this pop up on the test, and it kind of tricks people because you're thinking that they're so different. And in a lot of ways they are, but in some ways they do have things in common. Multicellular and unicellular, they have to have food for energy and for growth, or they need to make their own food like producers do. All living things need energy to survive. Without it, they cannot survive. If you are taking in food or making your own energy, you have to have a way to get rid of any waste. That could even be breathing in and breathing out. When you breathe in, you take in the oxygen, and throughout your body, in the different processes, you are building up carbon dioxide. I have to have a way to get rid of that waste. And if you look at that, that's going to be with our respiratory system. Again, even for a unicellular organism, it has to have a way to get rid of waste. And this says looking back at genetics. We're going to look forward to genetics, because we haven't taught that unit yet. But when you're looking at genetics, both multicellular and unicellular organisms, they have DNA, the thing that holds all of it's kind of like the building blocks of life that they are able to pass on to their offspring. So we have multicellular and unicellular organisms. They have a lot of differences. There are some things about them that are very unique. Multicellular organisms have specialized cells. Unicellular organisms are made up of one cell, but they do have some things in common in the fact that they have to be able to take in energy or food for energy, and they also have to be able to get rid of waste. We will stop there on this video, because I know you can have more stuff to do in class, and you've got to take notes and other things like that. Be sure to smash the like button and subscribe.